Okay, again, welcome. This is week 2 of what I've called a 4-week journey of Buddhist practice for daily life. And how many people were here last week? Okay, great. And those of you who are not, I'll be going back over some basics as we practice, so you won't miss anything from last week. My name is Bob McClure, which many of you know, and I've been practicing one form of meditation for over 50 years. And what I teach now is called Unified Mindfulness, and the reason I titled it this class, A Buddhist Journey, is because, as we will talk about in these 4 weeks, this method of meditation, a practice really, that we call unified mindfulness. It's unified because it actually allows you to practice in any tradition, but it brings the science, particularly the cognitive science, into your practice, and the techniques can actually help you with your practice as well. And for many people, the techniques themselves are their practice. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. I've got allergies as usual, so if you can't hear me way in the back, wave your hand, okay? And I'll speak up even more. So Unified Mindfulness, it was developed by Shinzen Young, who is an 80-year-old meditation teacher and neuroscience consultant. And he practiced in different forms of Buddhism, was a monk at one point. He's a meditation teacher and a consultant, neuroscience consultant now. And what he did was to create a sensory-based system, a way of practicing. And some things that make unified mindfulness unique and applicable to our daily lives. A couple things. It's often described as ancient wisdom meets modern science and practicality. And sometimes meditation techniques are almost taught, the analogy is it's like one technique, it's like having a hammer, and you go around the world, and when you have a hammer, everything you see is like a nail, okay? Because the only tool you have is the hammer. Well, unified mindfulness is more like a Swiss Army knife. And if you have a Swiss Army knife or ever have had one, you know that there are different tools on that knife, and depending on the circumstance that you need to use that knife, you have a tool. And that's true for this sensory-based system of practice, that it allows us to practice not just when we're sitting with our eyes closed, but more importantly, or as important, it allows us to be in the world and practice. So you're certainly not going to, when you're driving or cooking or talking to a friend, be closing your eyes and just doing a technique. Unified mindfulness allows you to use your sense experience, see, hear, or feel in any way, and you can bring your practice into whatever you're doing. So it actually allows us to increase our practice, especially if we don't have time to sit for 45 minutes every morning or whatever it is. So one analogy that's made that I like a lot, I work out at LA Fitness. As I get older, it's really important, we know, to build muscle strength. So I work out at a gym. The muscles that I'm developing are all kinds of muscles around my body. And the equipment I use are weights and machines. So there's an analogy to mindfulness training. It's a gym analogy. The gym that we're using when we're training our minds is our sensory experience. It's see, hear, feel. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more as we practice. So we're really working with our sense experience, that's the gym. The muscles that we're developing, I'm going to focus on tonight, are the three mental muscles: concentration, clarity, and equanimity. And I'll explain those. So we're working with our sense experience, training the mind, those three mental muscles. And then the equipment we're using, I'm going to talk about, we'll use tonight, are noting and labeling. That's the equipment. So because mindfulness is really a training, it's a useful analogy to training the body in otherwise a healthy way. So there's a saying that I like, that mindfulness is a bicep curl for the brain. It's a bicep curl for the brain. And what that means is that as we practice, we are developing our sensory experience and our brain, and that's where the research comes in increasingly. We understand how, not just the brain, but other systems in the body change, and therefore we can use more wellness to live our lives. So one definition of mindfulness is whenever these three mental muscles are working together, that's mindfulness. So the first mental muscle is concentration. And concentration, one way to think about it, the definition that we use, it's the ability to choose what to pay attention to that you consider important. So the analogy is it's like a laser pointer. You can point your attention at whatever in your experience you feel is important in the moment. And I'm sure you can see how in a world of social media, of busyness, of constant stimulation, as our attention gets degraded, it's really important to train the mind to have that freedom to choose what to pay attention to. I quoted, I think a couple of weeks ago, a study. There's one study, it's not very reliable, but it studied the difference between human attention and the attention of a goldfish. And what do you think they found? That our attention span in 2024 has degraded to about 8-9 seconds. The attention of a goldfish is 12 seconds. Again, that's not a reliable study, but I think it makes the point that we all, as we live the lives we live, we are losing our ability to pay attention to what we choose is important. So in our practice, developing this skill of concentration is really important. So, first skill is concentration. The second is clarity. And one way to describe clarity is it's just tracking our experience in real time. We know when we're seeing, hearing, feeling, thinking, feeling. We know the difference. Another way to think about it is that it allows us to become friends with our experience, with our sensory experience, so that we can just appreciate better what it is that we're experiencing. And then the third skill is maybe some researchers believe that this is the most important skill for mindfulness, and we use the term equanimity. Now, that's not a term we use very often in English, but the definition is just that ability to be with your experience, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, familiar, unfamiliar, but to be with it without having to push it away or hang on to it. So it's a little bit like being an inner surfer. You can actually surf the waves of your experience without freaking out, okay? Without getting disturbed. So here are the three skills: concentration, clarity, and equanimity. And when we practice in just a few minutes, I'm going to be referencing the instructions so that you can actually experience those three skills as you meditate. Now, one additional thing, and then we'll go ahead and practice, and you'll experience it. Tonight we're going to look at those two tools, noting and labeling. Noting is just that ability to spend a few seconds really concentrating, paying attention to whatever you choose. Okay? We all do that. And it's the difference between glancing at a tree, just in a moment, just looking at it quickly, and really seeing the tree, seeing the leaves, seeing the color, spending that attention that really allows us to appreciate what it is we're seeing or hearing or feeling. So that's noting, and it can be just a few seconds. Okay? And then the second thing is the tool of labeling is just using a label. You use it as a silent label in the meditation of either see, hear, or feel. We just use those three labels that help us be aware of what we're actually experiencing. Okay, enough of my sermonette for tonight, okay? There's no one way to meditate. If anybody tells you that there's only one way, run, because there's many different ways to develop the mind. So what I ask you to do is try this form of practice and see if it works for you. Okay, that's the most important thing. So before we actually do the most important part, which is to actually practice, what questions do you have? Or what comments or objections, better yet, do you have about what I've just presented? Pretty clear? Or clear as mud? Yes.
So with the noting, I was trying to kind of figure out the difference between noting and labeling. So noting, you're really just taking a little more time with the object, and labeling is just labeling it one of those three things.
Exactly. Okay. And why don't we do it right now, so that will be the best explanation. Let's use the sense experience of see and pick some object in the room that's interesting to you, and just rest your attention there for a few seconds and really look at it. Notice details. So in choosing the object, you're concentrating and noticing the details. You're developing clarity, that second skill. And then be aware as you're looking, you're seeing the object. You may hear my voice. You may feel something in your body. There may be sounds. Just notice that those come and go and come back to the object. That's the equanimity, allowing other experiences to come and go, but focus. Okay? And now as you look at the object, you might add a silent note of just see at a steady pace. So see, see, see at your own pace. Okay, great. What did you experience? What happened? Did you really see the object? And what did you notice about whatever you chose? What did you notice?
I noticed the colors.
Ah, the colors, okay. So you spent those few seconds really focused on it, and you noticed colors, okay. How about others? What did you notice? Yes?
Shadows of the objects.
Shadows, okay. How many people notice their attention moving around, coming and going? Yeah, okay, that's normal. That's why noting is about resting our attention, but then when we get caught by some other experience, we choose to just come back. And noting can be anywhere from 3 seconds or longer. You know, you choose what to note or how long to note. And the label, how many people were able to use the label? You able to use it? Okay. It can actually be a prompt or a help to keep focusing the attention on what we're choosing to pay attention to. Okay. What else? Any questions about what I presented so far? Pretty clear? Okay, so why don't we go ahead and actually do it, okay? And what I want to do is I did last week, I want to do what we call a tour of the senses, because remember, what I said is that the sensory gym, we can divide up into see or hear or feel, and that also includes thinking and emotions as well. We use those same simple labels for everything we experience. So let's start out with see. You just did, but go ahead and pick another object and just rest your attention on that object. You're noting it, and you can use the label see. And you're strengthening your concentration as you do, and your clarity as well. It's 2 mental muscles. And now let go of see, and now let's do what we call see in. And in your imagination, maybe picture the Statue of Liberty. And see if you can imagine in your mind the Statue of Liberty. You can actually see it. And you might notice where it shows up. We'll call that image space, so that when we think visually, those images pop up. We can be aware of what we're thinking, and we can use the label see for that as well. And now let's let go of see, and let's do hear. So bring your attention to the sounds around, or sound around us, and just spend a few seconds really listening to the sounds. And if you want, you can use the label hear. As you notice different sounds in the environment, and now we can let go of hearing out, and we can also hear ourselves when we think, okay? Because again, thinking can be thought of as either visual or auditory. So to experience that, silently recite your phone number to yourself, and you can hear it. You hear yourself saying it? Okay, great. And that's also, we can label that here if we're going to label. So we've been able to see out and see in, hear out, hear in, and then feel. Just bring your attention to the sensation you feel in your body. It could be as simple as your feet resting on the floor, or any pleasant or unpleasant sensation in the body. And bring your attention there, and if you want, you can use the label feel. And so we'll call that feel out. And feel in are the emotions. And every emotion shows up in the body, whether we're aware of it or not. And a simple example would be to put a smile on your face and notice if you don't experience some kind of positive feeling that shows up in your face. And we'll call that feel in. Okay? And we know that strong emotions like anger or anxiety or fear certainly show up in the body. And we can be aware of those emotions, and we can actually use a label to sharpen our awareness, the label of feel. Okay? So, the tour of the senses was we were able to see out in the world, see in our imagination when we're thinking visually, hear out in the world, sounds around us, and we can also hear in when we're talking to ourselves, which we do all day long. You know, we'll say it's thinking, it's auditory thinking, and then feel the sensations in our body, which are going on all the time, and the emotions that show up, which we can also call feel. So in a very simple way, with these three labels, see, hear, or feel, we can be aware of anything we experience. Now, can anybody think of an experience that we can't label see, hear, or feel? I challenged you last week on that. Anybody think of something? No? Okay. Yeah, so sometimes people come up with intuition. What's intuition? Well, you know what, in English, the word intuition really almost means that we have a sensation, maybe a feeling in the body, and it involves a thought. So again, we could actually break down something like intuition into a feel and a hear or a see. So even those kind of unclear sensations or experiences can be labeled as well. So why is this important? Is because as we get used to using noting and labeling, and again, the labeling is optional. I don't always have to label, but particularly the noting increases your ability, my ability, to pay attention, really focus on what's important. And the label can help us train or aim our attention at what we're choosing as well. Okay? So why don't we go ahead and do the full see, hear, feel practice. And I'll do some prompts around being aware of noting and labeling as well. Okay? Any questions before we start? Yes?
Are we closing our eyes or are we focusing on something?
Great question. You can do either one. Okay, whatever you're more comfortable with. And if you've never meditated with your eyes open, and you know in Zen practice, often the instruction is to just have your eyes partly open, or you can have them closed. But the advantage of learning to meditate with the eyes open, at least some of the time, is you can do it in daily life. You know, if you're driving and you want to do a practice, you don't want to close your eyes, that's for sure, right? So it's helpful. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we give it a try? Okay, so let's go ahead and do about 10 minutes, and I'll do some guidance. Let's assume a mindfulness posture that's comfortable for you. And if you want to just lengthen your spine and loosen your jaw and your shoulders. So lengthening to alert the body and relaxing muscles in the body to relax the mind. So mindfulness is a combination of alertness and relaxation, both. And again, you can have your eyes open or closed. And allow your attention to move freely. And when you notice where it lands, decide, is it see, hear, or feel, in or out? You might spend just a few seconds concentrating on what you experience. Maybe even use the label, see, hear, or feel. And then let it go. And notice where your attention goes next, and repeat. And if two sense experiences come at you at once, just pick one. Doesn't matter which one. Spend a few seconds noting, and maybe use the label, see, hear, or feel, then let it go, and notice where your attention goes next. And repeat. When you get distracted or lose your place, just come back and be aware of what you're experiencing. Spend a few seconds concentrating on it. Maybe use the label, see, hear, or feel. And let it go and see where your attention goes next. it can be helpful to make the labels at a steady pace. So it might sound something like this. Feel, hear, hear, see, feel, at your own pace. And it's common to get lost in thought. And when you notice that, decide, is it here? Or is it see? You might label it. And then notice what comes next. We'll do about 4 more minutes of practice. See, hear, or feel. Okay, good work, good practice, everybody. So, what did you experience? What happened? Yes.
I hear a lot.
You heard a lot?
Inside my head and outside,
Ah, okay.
especially if I'm labeling things.
You're aware, I'm
If
sorry.
I'm labeling things like see, I hear it and then I see it.
Yes. Great. So did they hear insight? Was it thoughts you were having? Is that what you're aware of?
Sometimes, but oftentimes, I was just focusing on where I was looking, so it's either seeing, hearing outside, hearing myself say the labels from inside,
Okay.
and then feeling sensation in my body.
Great. Well, and the way you describe it, we would say you were being really mindful. You were aware of what you were experiencing, right? Terrific. How about others? How was it? What happened? Yes.
As I was settling into the meditation, my mind started to wander to events earlier in the day,
Yeah.
and I had a strong feeling. And as it arose, I just was able to notate that feeling, and then immediately returned back to the present in the room and on to the next sound that I heard. And I was kind of amazed at how, just by labeling the feeling, the emotion as a feeling, I was able to acknowledge it and return back to the present, rather than my mind drifting off like it normally does for a long period of time.
Yeah. Well, and what I would say is that your awareness of the emotion or feeling, you were in the present moment. When you were able to label the emotion feel at that moment, you were fully present. Because we sometimes will think that we're distracted by thoughts or distracted by emotions, but if we can be aware at that moment we're experiencing it, then we're really in the present moment. Absolutely. And that's true with thinking. It's particularly when we meditate, our minds sort of get lost, right? At that moment you recognize, whoa, I'm just seeing all those images that we call thinking, or I'm hearing what I'm telling myself about the day, okay? That moment where you recognize that you're seeing or hearing, thinking, you're in the present moment. And that's why this technique of a sensory-based experience or practice means that you can be present at any moment, at any time. How about others? How was it? Yeah, probably.
Well, for me, for many years, my practice has been following my breath.
Right.
Almost exclusively focusing on the breath. Sometimes allowing in sound, but my eyes have always been like partially closed, partially open, so there was never the seeing thing. So now I'm just kind of like translating a little bit to this practice where if I'm feeling my breath, it's feel, rather than just like counting the breath or whatever. And then what I used to do was when I would get lost in thought, I would just label it thinking.
Right.
But now, okay, was I seeing something or was I hearing something? And then, so I have to do a little translation there. And it's fine, it's just taking a little practice for me to switch a little bit to focus.
Right.
And then sometimes when I'm thinking, I'll be imagining, which seems like a slightly different type of thinking, but it's still thinking. So then I have to ask myself, was I seeing those things or hearing those things? So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we would say is that you're deepening your mindfulness with clarity. Because again, clarity is just knowing the difference between what you're seeing or hearing or feeling, and it's deepening your mindfulness actually as well. Yeah. And you could, this is a good example of how you can apply this to your Zen practice. If you want to just use the breath as your sense object, that's perfectly okay. And, you might just keep going back to feel the breath, okay? And then, what's going to happen? We might say in other forms of meditation, we're going to get distracted. So then we'll have a thought, or we'll hear a sound, and we come back. But just being able to be aware that I'm having a thought, see or hear, or I'm hearing a sound, just knowing that, and then coming back to the breath, you're increasing your mindfulness. So that's a good example of how you can apply this sensory experience to any practice that you're going to do as well. Or you can do it just as we did it as well. How about others? Anybody else? Yes.
I also noticed something with the breath, which I was initially trying to just do the see, hear, and feel with my breath. I don't know, to get brownie points or something. And it but then it started to feel like a means of control. And I always whenever I try to focus on just my breath in meditation, it's very hard for me.
Yeah.
And so I just let that go and just let the thoughts come and the sounds and all the sensations just come as they wanted to.
Great.
And that felt a lot more freeing, and then I wasn't so stuck on trying to control this one thing.
Yes. Yeah. I share with you that journey. So I spent 30 years using the breath. And one time my teacher said to me, you need to get a PhD in control, because I was always controlling my breath. And there was always tension, no matter what I did. And once I learned this method, I did the same thing. I could just begin to let go of the breath, because what was happening is, as you just described it, a thought might come up. I could label it, let it go, and then I'd hear a siren. Hear, let it go, feel something in my body, feel. So I was letting go of the control. And what that's teaching us is that third skill of equanimity. We're not trying to hang on to an experience, and we're not trying to push it away. And this equanimity becomes so important as we experience the challenges of life, whether it be, physical pain or emotional pain or conflicts with others. We can bring some equanimity without trying to control our experience. Does that make sense? So how many people felt at some point a little bit of a rhythm where you were beginning to notice you were moving from maybe sounds to thoughts so between see or hear or feel? Did you notice that? Great. And the more you practice, the more that becomes easier, and it becomes natural as well. And that's when you can use the pacing of the labels. As you get used to that, it can be an instant way to calm down. Because when you start using this form of meditation, you'll notice that the mind is jumping around, okay? And you can even feel tension. And as you slow down the labeling, as I modeled it, so right now, you can actually see me meditating right now. See, hear, see, feel. You get a sense of that pacing, and what it's doing is it's allowing me to let go of control. And there's almost a rhythm. That's why we use that term. It's like an inner surfer. You're surfing the experience as well. How about others? Anybody else want to share? Is it really challenging? Hard to do? Yes. Challenge?
It's hard for me. Yeah, lots of like chaotic thinking and frustration. And then becoming aware of it, but then just going right back into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
being frustrated that I'm going right back into it, I guess.
Okay. Where did you experience the frustration? Do you know how you would label it?
My mind, or my thoughts.
Okay.
Or like in my body, where did I feel it?
Yeah.
This angst. Like in
You
my
can
stomach.
feel it in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the mind's going to move very quickly, and you can't capture everything. That's not the goal. But if you can just begin to notice when you're having a thought, label it, and if you can let it go, and then you might go right back. It's okay. Label it again, and then you might notice the frustration might be a feel. And that's the way out of that dilemma of getting caught. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One thing I did notice the most feeling like was in my jaw. Attention.
Yes.
So what would you just focus on how?
Well, you know what I would suggest, when you notice it, you can just label it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've experienced it again, label it again
Okay.
with a kind, gentle label. That's the instruction I didn't give, but you want to make the labels kind and gentle. And you might spend minutes just beginning to be aware of how fast your thoughts go and how frustrating that can be, but you begin to actually break it down into manageable experience. And it's no longer getting you, you're bringing mindfulness to it. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
That's one of the frustrations, is we begin to notice how many thoughts we have, and how when we try to control that, it doesn't work. And we can't control it. We can only be aware of it. So in the time remaining, how many people, I introduced last week 2 resources. One was the website for Unified Mindfulness. If you want a short little training that's free, you just Google Unified Mindfulness, and there's a core training. It's actually really fun. Did anybody try it, by the way? Robin?
Yeah.
How was it?
It's very helpful.
Was it?
It's very easy to follow and,
Little cartoon.
cartoony.
Yeah. Okay. So you might check it out. And then the other thing is that I offered the Equa app, the Equa Personal Trainer. Did anybody get it and try it? How many people did? A few people? Any feedback? How was it, if you were able to use it?
It's easy to use and nice because it breaks everything down, so you can do it in sections. So
Yes.
I'm trying to focus on one aspect of the seed you'll hear.
Right. And it will take you through these core foundational practices as well. Yeah. So what this is that Carnegie Mellon, Equa Health, has developed a app. It's 10 minutes, a day or less. You can have it on your phone, and it actually provides the training, as we went through some of it tonight. And if you'd like to try it, see me after class and just get your email. I'll be glad to send it to you. And it's free for you. Normally it costs, but it's a great way, particularly in our busy lives, to have a way to access this mindfulness training that we can do. And the training then builds outside in our daily lives as well. Okay, other questions or comments?
Can you say that again? It's unified what?
It's Unified Mindfulness, and that's the website. Okay. So any questions about anything we covered tonight? I covered a lot of material. Hopefully you experienced what the practice, or at least this practice. In Unified Mindfulness, there are 40 techniques, 40 different techniques for practicing mindfulness. And that's where the Swiss Army knife analogy comes in. There are different techniques for different circumstances in life. So, for example, and I think next week we will do it, there's a technique called rest. And it uses see, hear, feel, but it's a way to bring calm in the midst of a stressful situation. And, we know that when we sit down to meditate, we can often calm ourselves down. But the rest technique, you can use it out in the world for 2-3 minutes. And when you get good at it, you can actually begin to feel yourself calming down with whatever you're doing. It could be in the midst of a stressful meeting at work, or somebody cut you off on the freeway and you're tense. You can use that kind of a technique to, in the moment, with your eyes open, practice and calm yourself down. So the idea is that we, in 4 weeks we don't have time and we can't absorb 40 techniques. We're doing basics, okay? But I hold that out as a possibility for really extending your mindfulness into, and my mindfulness, into whatever we do as well. So any last questions or challenges for tonight? Okay, next week we'll practice again, see, hear, feel, but also I'm going to really focus on how can you bring it into daily life. And we call these micro hits, meaning those moments in your day where you can use the technique with whatever you're doing to increase these 3 skills. So next week we'll really focus on ways to bring mindfulness into daily life. And then you can be practicing whatever you're doing as well. Okay? So, David has got, before I shut off the YouTube video, David has some announcements to make.
He has millions of followers online.
Yeah, sure.
So, hey everyone, my name is David. I am your host for tonight. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to those who show up. Those who lead are not monks, priests, nuns, gurus, teachers. They're not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone struggling with addiction. And our food redistribution program meets every Thursday at 4:30 downstairs. We have classes and programs, and everything we do here is always free of charge. The full schedule is above the shoe rack, and it's also posted on the website. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and return it when you are done. Please straighten up your chairs. There's just a few windows to close tonight, so if someone can help with that, thank you for being here, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Please come back.
There you go. You now doesn't want to turn me off. Hold on, let's go.
Oh, yeah.